I can't believe you showed up. I did this last year. I was convinced nobody would buy a ticket, and they did. And this year was the same fear. No one would buy a ticket, and a lot of you did. And it was just really humbling, and I'm very excited about being here today. So thank you guys. I want to thank our sponsors who helped make this event possible. They've definitely helped front the cost for this. I want to thank our volunteers who came out to help for the day. I want to thank our speakers who took time off work to share what they're really passionate about. I want to thank especially the co-organizer of this, Mina Markham, who this wouldn't have happened without her. So thank you guys very much. So this is the second year doing this. Dallas got bigger too, not just the conference. We grew about 100K in population, just the Dallas alone. As far as our industry, according to BLS, we had about 1,800 jobs in Dallas-Fort Worth for our industry, and that's better than what we did nationally. Our phones got bigger, faster. These are the top phones from last year, and they approved, when we talk about manufacturers selling the key features of what a phone is, they talk about the camera, the new apps, what new operating system it can do, how it's better than their competitors. They don't really talk about the improvements on the browsers. So when I went and got the SunSpider benchmarks, and that's just one of several they could choose from, we actually improved JavaScript performance on just phones about almost 5 times faster than the iPhone 4S. Now, the iPhone 4S didn't actually come out last year. It came out the year before. I just kind of left it on there so that I can remind myself what a POS this is and finally upgrade. I upgraded to iOS 8, and it kind of went from the little engine that could to the little engine that has no battery life anymore. Or it just keeps me warm when I'm trying to run something. But it comes with these great features for the Safari. A lot of the other browsers have already been doing this kind of stuff, but they're finally available to us on multiple platforms now, which is great. I'm not even sure what some of these things are. I don't really know the difference between high-res timing APIs versus nav timing APIs. I'm sure people here do, but that's kind of what this is about, right? This is about us learning new things because we're on a platform that's always changing. And part of our job is actually to continue ongoing education, to keep track of the constant changes in technology. Today, we're learning about some of these things. This is a lot of stuff that we're not used to seeing when we make websites. When we talk about making websites from a few years ago, it was pretty much Photoshop to HTML5 or Photoshop to the web. And those were legitimate tools at the time. But we're not here to learn about Photoshop today. We're not here to learn about WYSIWYG editors, Dreamweaver, because they don't work for what we're doing anymore. But people still rely upon them. It's still kind of an understanding that the tools that we have are the same kind of tools that we're using for traditional publishing, that we can actually just enable what you're already doing. It's part of your workflow. You're already doing some kind of experience with your brand, and this is just another extension of that. And you know what? It's pretty much a utility. You can just hop online and find someone to do it. Where's one that I really liked on here? Yeah, Flash. That's what we should have been doing. There's a lot of these. Let me get through this. They're still really, really popular, though. And these are ones I've found I love that GIF just playing over and over again. They couldn't even use the right icon. But this is still part of the workflow for a lot of companies that we work for. And it's not that illegitimate when you think about it. I mean, you're in charge of a branded experience. You're taking a package, and it's going to be a one-to-one transition. What it looks like on the billboard, it has to look like on TV or media ads. It has to look like on your banners or your interstitial displays. So why wouldn't it be the same kind of workflow, waterfall project setup that you would do for the websites? But the difference is we know the kind of audiences that are seeing billboards and radio ads and TV spots. You've got 2 seconds to capture them. You know exactly how they're going to view it, either driving to work. We don't know how people use our websites anymore. We can't predict what kind of form they're going to be holding it in, if they're going to be like using their phone while they're on TV, hopefully not while they're driving, but you know, we're coming into a lot of shapes and forms, and a one-to-one doesn't really work. I remember when we were actually pitching responsive web design at an ad agency I worked at, and it was a bit of an elevator pitch because we really needed to get our traditional creative directors on board with their digital campaigns. And in the middle of this pitch, and it was really well done, the main creative director just completely interrupts it and says, all right, what you're telling me is if I have to make a website to work for desktop, to tablet, to phone, I've got to come up with 3 Photoshop documents. And that was actually a legitimate concern of his because that's his world. That's what he works in. He works in InDesign. He works in these traditional mediums. And the tools that he knew about, that's all there were. But when you're taking all the different kinds of shapes, sizes, and resolutions, those don't work. Those tools aren't valid anymore. You're not going to make enough PSDs. I mean, the obvious answer to his question was, no, you don't make 3 PSDs. The not so obvious answer was, why would you use a Photoshop document at all to make the web? When it comes to the tools that we have now, when it comes to how we program interactivity, testing, optimization, debugging, pushing things out across all devices, all browsers, we've got some really powerful tools that Photoshop cannot even keep up with. And they're trying to keep up with that. I mean, they're coming out with tools to help enable us to pull assets out, get CSS values, which is great, but most of the time, developing websites now, the only time you open up a Photoshop document is to get what that color is, and then you go back to programming. So going back to today's agenda, these are some of the tools that we're using. And the stuff here, the components, the frameworks, methods, just the technology in general, this is what happens when we're on an evolving platform that everyone contributes to. It's changing all the time. And we're in a position where we can make the web however we want to do it. We can use whatever kind of tools, and we know there's like new tools coming out every day. There's always a new JavaScript framework because we're open to any kind of possibility that works for us and how we want to get out of it. So we don't necessarily have to learn a whole nother set of languages in order to send our websites to be apps. We have frameworks now that actually do a pretty good job of that. So we don't have to learn native languages. We're going to talk about Ionic Framework today. And he's going to give you a demonstration on how to make a website an app in 20 minutes. I think that's amazing. I'd love to see that. That'd be pretty cool. Or you don't necessarily even have to, you can stick with your browser, but just learn native code. With C++ running on the Unreal Engine, Unreal and Mozilla got together and they said, let's use Emscripten to compile to run in the browser. So now we've got Unreal Engine, game engine, running in a browser, near 60 frames per second. There's no components on here that you need other than the browser. There's no extensions, there's no Flash plugins or any kind of plugins. It's just the browser. And Chrome is now supporting this. Microsoft is actually looking into supporting this. This is on their list of investigating. I have no idea what Apple's doing. They don't really share what they're going to put in until they actually share with everyone at the same time. Or you can skip that altogether and write code directly to hardware, which is terrifying. So with projects like NodeBots, Johnny5, we're actually able to send JavaScript code. Like you would push code to a Git repo in your command line, you would do the same thing with JavaScript. And you can solve real world problems, or you can create drones to, I don't know, go back in time and find Sarah Connor and quash the human rebellion once and for all. Or you can make wearable technology. This is Cassandra Porch. She was at a JS Conf here recently showing off this dress she built out of JavaScript. So it's got little LED lights on here, it blinks, it's got the hardware that actually runs it. And then she said, well, it's too bright when I go into darkened rooms where it's just like, that's all you see, so I put a photocell on here. So now she's got a sensor for the room ambience. And then to top that off, she actually put an accelerometer, so when she spins around, it blinks faster. We all know about Node running as backend servers. These are things that are great for if you want to have like just local environments that you can run. It's purely in JavaScript. And you can use all of our tools that we're using right now, like Yeoman. Or in this case, if you're Walmart, you can use it to power the servers for all your mobile users. It's a very legitimate backend server now, running JavaScript. So web development isn't really narrowed down by what we used to know. We're not a Photoshop to HTML anymore. We're pretty broad, we're pretty expansive. And we're shaping the direction of our industry that we want it to. Girl Develop It is a really good example of this. This is one of their launch parties. If you don't know who Girl Develop It is, it's a nonprofit group that offers affordable education to women who want to learn web development. And there's one here, Mina Markham started it up. There's one over in Austin. There's one up in Raleigh, North Carolina that Julia is a part of. This says a lot about what we're about. This says we're not just production staff. We don't just build HTML websites and call it a day. We're actually advocating, we're being inclusive, and we want people to be a part of our industry that have an interest in it. And we want them to be safe and feel like they actually belong here. This is an example of that. Nowadays, you can't even go to a conference like this without a code of conduct page. It's not exclusive to front-end development, but this is ours. I'm sure everyone's read it. And this came about because about a year ago, a little more than that, people were starting to speak up. Women were experiencing not just general sexism or a bunch of bro texts, they were actually getting sexually harassed at conferences. And so a code of conduct kind of became a thing. It kind of said, this is not cool, this is absolutely bullshit. You shouldn't have to go to an event that you paid for, that we want you to be a part of, and actually not feel safe. And so people like John Ressig, other prominent speakers and developers won't even go to conferences unless they know you have this. This is what we do that says what we do is important. That the people who contribute so much to our work are important to us. This is the new name in CSS for purple. If you're not familiar with Eric Meyer's work, don't worry about it. What you're doing today is probably based on the groundwork he laid out for all of us. And so when his 6-year-old little girl lost a battle to cancer, it affected a lot of us. And as a kind of memorial, we proposed to the browsers, and they happily accepted that this be actually part of our language, that her favorite color is now what we can use. You can actually go into Chrome DevTools right now, open up the inspector, type in Rebecca Purple, and that will be supported in Chrome. And the other browsers are rolling this out. So this says a lot about our industry, that we're much more capable of shaping how we want our industry to be than probably any other software industry. In the case of the picture element, that took a lot of advocacy and work and meetups and summits for us to get together to come up with syntax that is actually solving problems that we're dealing with every day. When it comes to responsive web design, we were doing some pretty funky, monkey-wrenching, clown car syntax to make sure that the images that we display on mobile or desktop or high-res desktops are actually appropriate for the context. And this is pretty much what we've come up with. They're still working on it. The browsers are starting to roll it out in their nightly builds. Lindsay Norman is actually going to talk about strategies that you can use for this. And definitely take notes on that. So a lot of this stuff happened just this year. The picture element kind of took a little longer than a year to get involved, but we now have a polyfill for it. The browsers are doing it in their nightly builds. this is pretty exciting stuff when you think about it, that just in this amount of time, we've made a lot of decisions in what we want out of the web. So the year's almost over. What are we going to do for next year? We got to come up with a bunch of new stuff. I'm pretty excited about what we're talking about already. Tech that we can actually start getting our hands on to make it better. Ways that we can improve our industry that they'll continue to grow. Like here in Dallas-Fort Worth, we're actually adding more jobs than we are nationally. I think diversity is going to continue to be a big issue. I think that's only going to improve our tech companies, both culturally and intellectually. I think that now that iOS and Android Chrome are like running WebGL, I'm thinking games. I'm thinking be able to deploy games or apps that you don't have to go to the App Store to submit. You don't actually have to have some committee and some arbitrary decision whether or not you can be a part of their closed ecosystem. And that's the web. That's what we can do now. Other predictions for 2015? I think we're going to move, not like we've moved from responsive web design into mobile first, where we're focusing more on just not only how we code and present our tech so it's available on devices, but what we need to make sure our users get first, and that affects design strategies, that affects programming strategies. But now we're looking into offline first, and that's going to be trending a lot. Google I/O showed off service workers. If you guys haven't tried it, service workers, they look pretty great. It's more than just caching things offline. It actually, you can declare manifests to have push notifications that when your website updates through your server, it actually sends you a push notification for that website, and something that apps don't even do, it can actually pre-fetch that data. And so when you go to the web page, it's actually there for you. And so now we're seeing how we can address the shortcomings of apps versus websites and leverage that with what websites can do better. We can dress our kids up in embarrassing clothes. Other things that are going to happen, I think IE is going to get a lot more popular. They're actively working with developers. We already saw IE 11 actually handle things like animation kind of faster than Chrome on Windows, and that was mainly because it was already 64-bit. Firefox is now coming out for 64-bit. But they are communicating with us. They want to know what's important to us. And unlike when we had that weird browser war where they're all trying to push their own proprietary technology of what they think the web should be, and where we stepped in and said, let's do web standards, I think they're going to be way more active in looking to us what our web standards should be and what we want for our users. I don't know what's going to happen. I think I leave this to you guys. You've heard about how open and any kind of definition of what you want the web to be is pretty much how you want to build it. So what is it? You know, listen to our speakers today. They're really passionate about what they're presenting. And I hope you get some inspiration out of that too. And go build that thing that you want to build. Change the web how you want it to. And then come back here and show us. I mean, be on your stage next year and present your new what is the web. Thank you.